All right, this is a 2019 E350, and as you can see, it's been converted into a van. And this is a no start, and put the keys in the vehicle, if I could find them. Go to crank, there it is. We take the keys out, and the lights on our cluster stay on, most of our lights. So our ignition switch was replaced from the factory. It's right here, accessible. I might think about just checking powers and grounds to that first. And looks like the steering column lock solenoid was also replaced with an aftermarket one. And we have just a lot of crap that's been tied into this vehicle. And I'm kind of not going to just look at that stuff. I'm just going to start from the beginning, do a self-test, and go from there. So we have an ignition fault. This doesn't look like it's active right now, and I know we're probably going to have to clear these codes. Lost comm with multiple modules. Electric failure. Immobilizer ECM. Let's see here. All right, let's start by clearing these codes. Good thing about IDS is we can always go back and look at those codes in our status log. Okay, so we're left with the P1602 immobilizer communication error. Let's see. General electric failure. Ignition stuck in start. Accessory delay relay circuit failure. We're right at the ignition switch. I think I'm going to just make sure our powers are good going to this ignition switch. And before we do that, audio, A pin. This doesn't have an A pin. It doesn't have that. Okay. Great thing about these cutaways is there's not too much in it. Let's go to our network test first. I want to be 100% sure we have communication. See, this doesn't give us the topology. Okay, no big deal. No different from doing a self-test, I think. Whatever. Here's our live network monitor. Yeah, we're all good. Okay, so being the ignition switch was so easy to access, I just checked all of our powers going to this ignition switch, and they were all good. So I'm in the smart junction box. They kind of have this PID listed as gem. I don't know why they would call this a gem module, but anyway, it shows we have 11 volts, and all of our ignition inputs, ignition A, ignition off, and ignition run, none of these change. They all say no, and right now we have the ignition on. We turn it off, we have nothing. We have a key switch fault. Accessory, not much change at all. So I'm just going to go directly at the smart junction box, which is on the driver's side, and I guess I'm going to check my ignition switch inputs next, power and grounds. Alright, so I suspected there was something wrong with the smart junction box. So here we have connector 2280 that plugs inside the smart junction box. And there are 4 grounds that go to this connector. I load tested the powers and grounds. 1 power, 4 grounds. All of them seem to be good. So I pulled up some more PIDs for the smart junction box. This time I went a bit more crazier and I got just a ton of stuff on here. So aside from our ignition switch inputs that do not read, and by the way, our ignition switch is working correctly. Tested at the switch, and we tested all the circuits going to the smart junction box. We can also take a look at our low beam, and no matter if we turn our low beams off, on, high beams, park, we still get the same parameter, and our headlights are constantly on even when we turn the key out of the ignition. So even more proof that our inputs are all going to the smart junction box, but it's just not responding correctly. Alright, so I have some PIDs pulled up for the PCM right now, and we have a charger on it, and we can see a little bit of ripple here. Well, we do have 12 volts. Reference is good. Anyway, let's go up to our transmission range. We have park. Range is allowing the engine to start. No faults within our range. We do have starter relay enable, which is disabled right now. But pay attention to our start key parameter. And this ignition switch goes directly to our PCM. And the smart junction box was not reporting the ignition status correctly. But watch what happens when we crank the vehicle. We go from off to now on. So the PCM is actually able to interpret this ignition switch. PCM is good, but why can't the smart junction box interpret any of our inputs correctly? We've got good powers, we've got good grounds. Now, it's always tough making a call when you just have so much of this shit tied into the car, but I don't see where it could be tied into any of the circuits that could possibly be related. So we're at the point where I'm just going to have to make a call on a smart junction box, and I just hate making a call on modules in general, but I think we did enough testing to make that call. Alright guys, so I don't always get to show you the fix, but our low beams are now off. This is the smart junction box that was replaced. Has already been programmed. Let's come inside the vehicle. Ignition is off. All of our lights are also off. That's a good sign. And we go to start it. And we're good.